I think what you're seeing today in a lot of the media about AI is this frustration between CEOs who are boldly proclaiming, oh, we're just going to cut half the company and use AI to do it. And then people on the front line are like, it doesn't do it yet. Like it's helping and it's doing things, but it's a big leap to just say,
Yeah.
just sack everybody and put AI in it because
It doesn't have
it's not there.
context.
Yeah, and it's creating, I think, in many parts of the world, fear in the people doing the work that they're supposed to figure out how to eliminate themselves. And I just see it as a totally different opportunity to just create much more satisfying types of work for people at all levels of the organization, and really being able to transform the way things get done.
Bryan, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Coming with a professional microphone, professional headphones. I love it. I love it.
Hey, this is a professional podcast, so I feel like I needed to elevate my game.
Yeah. Anyway, firstly, how you been? How are things?
I'm doing good. Summertime, like we were just saying, it's foggy and rainy in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But we're all good.
Love it. Before we jump in, like you've had such a interesting career journey. Tell everyone a little bit about your background and then the journey to where we are today at Nextdoor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working in the tech industry most of my career. I originally grew up in New England, outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I found myself after college in recruiting with a really large organization called Aerotech that actually transferred me to San Francisco in the late 90s. I mean, I'm dating myself here, but it was the dot-com boom in San Francisco. And the company I was working for was having a tough time keeping recruiters because of all the dot-coms. Of course, I left a few months later to go to work for my first startup. And that was really kind of the beginning of my journey in Silicon Valley. In the 2000s, kind of that decade of my career, the first part of it was working for a woman, Valerie Fredrickson, leading her executive search practice, HR consulting. So I really got grounded in how to build leadership teams and recruitment of that nature. And then, like many people in that world, I wanted to go inside of an organization that was growing and kind of stick with one group. So in 2005, just a few months after their IPO, I joined Google, which is a much different company today. The Google I joined was about 3,500 employees. Like I said, it had just gone public, and it was really growing to become kind of the tech titan that it is today. I was there for almost 8 years. My last two were in New York City. Their great office in Chelsea Market in New York City. And that was, the early 2010s, which was a really fertile landscape for startups, many of which are now some of the biggest companies in tech today. So at this time, companies like Uber were about 100 people, Airbnb was about 100 people. The company I joined, Square, was just getting started, which is now called Block. And for one reason, I was dating my now partner, my wife. We were dating New York to LA, and so I kind of wanted to come back to California
It's
for
a
that
long
reason.
trip.
Yeah, and also because I wanted to come back to San Francisco and be a part of this next wave of technology and disruption that was happening. So I was at Square for a couple of years. It's where I met Sarah Fryer, who becomes important later in my career story again. She was the CFO of Square at the time. I was leading the people team. And just before Square decided to go public, I joined Yahoo as their CHRO. This was the time where Marissa Mayer was the CEO. It was kind of big story about trying to turn around Yahoo. I'd worked with Marissa at Google. And that was kind of my first jump for two things. One, it was a large public company, 15,000 employees in 30 countries globally. It was a public company. And so that was my first CHRO job that was kind of like of a big thing. And also as a turnaround. So Google and Square were really growth opportunities where you were just chasing the potential of really significant product market fit. And so I was excited about a different set of challenges in a turnaround. So I was at Yahoo just about 2 years because we ended up the company ended up breaking up and being sold to Verizon, or the core business anyway. So I took some time off. I'd never really taken any time off. and started thinking about what my next thing was going to be. And that kind of leads us to the end of 2018 when I joined Nextdoor. And it was interesting. I met the founder, Nirav Tolia, in the interview process. And when we were interviewing, he told me he was actually moving up to the board and stepping aside as CEO. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not sure I'm going to take a job without knowing who the CEO is going to be. But it turned out Sarah Fryer, who's the CFO of Square, was coming on to lead Nextdoor as CEO. So I
Oh,
joined with
small
her.
world.
Yeah, small world in tech for sure. And so I joined with her at the end of 2018. And at the time, Nextdoor had been around for about 7 years. And that period was rocky. It had a shorter runway financially. It had had some turnover, and was just kind of the board, it was ready for new leadership. So I joined with her. And then the next 5 years, we went through a lot of stuff. Like we raised money. We ultimately took the company public. We went through COVID. We were about 150 people when I joined, and we hired a few hundred people during COVID. So we kind of went from 150 to six or 700 just during that 2020, 2021, 22 period of the global lockdown or the global pandemic.
We should probably
And
explain,
then
Brian, what Nextdoor does, just for the people that are listening that
Yeah,
may
yeah.
not be
So,
aware.
so the best way to think about Nextdoor is it's an app that provides technology and tools for your neighborhood or your local community. We just had a major relaunch of the product experience just last week. There's tons of press right now about it's the end of July, the relaunch of the product. And it's a combination of the utility of the product and the local community you're in. And for us, the product really centers on three major aspects of utility, which is on kind of local news. So as you imagine, the local newspaper that we all kind of grew up with has really kind of faded away. It's much harder to find kind of journalisms that's unique to your part of the world, small part of the world. Timely alerts, though things like safety, weather events like snowstorms and hurricanes is really good use case for Nextdoor. And then also the local recommendations. So the recommendations of your neighbors. It's really hard to learn what someone down the street from you is using to either clean their house or take care of their yard or fix the sink, whatever that might be. So anyway, bringing it into the future, Sarah Fryer, she's now the CFO of OpenAI. She stepped aside as CEO about a year and a half ago, and the founder, Nirav Tolia, came back to CEO. And so the last year and a half has really been this cultural transformation of the founder returning and bringing Nextdoor into this like third era of the company.
Wow, I feel
That
like
brings us today.
we're gonna have a movie.
Yeah, so at some point, you haven't really made it in tech until they make a movie about your company.
Yeah, yeah. What was it that you mentioned a little bit, but what's really top of mind for you, and what really attracted you for the organization? Where did you really feel like you could add value to the
Well, back
business?
when I joined in 2018, what I liked about it was 150 people, so it was a startup. It had a good product. Like I think the idea of a neighbor is a very, very big one. So in tech, finding a very high ceiling can be difficult, but everyone in the world, every culture understands the idea of a neighbor. So that kind of opportunity I appreciated, but it also had the element of a CEO change and a turnaround, cultural transformation. And I think it's really difficult to find both a startup opportunity and a turnaround transformation at the same time. And it really married a lot of my prior experience with an incoming CEO that I knew really well. So that was a long time ago now. That was 7 years ago. So a lot
Wow.
has really changed. But still, today I really appreciate the team that I work with. The people team at Nextdoor is just an outstanding group of people. We've all worked together for many years now. And I also have found, a company that has a mission, particularly our mission is very much centered on community, helps you really kind of feel like the impact you're making is making the world a better place.
Yeah. Could you share details about your neighbor program? I think we discussed
Oh
last
yeah,
time we spoke. I think
so
it's really
we
interesting for everyone.
did. So this is very present mind, right? So this is about the transformation in the workplace due to the rise of artificial intelligence. And so for us, I'm kind of the lead for what we call Project NAI-BOR, and that's neighbor spelled incorrectly, NAIBOR. And it's an acronym, which is Next Door Artificial Intelligence Building Operational Readiness. And so
Love it.
we've kind of brought together a task force across the people team, the IT and IS teams, information technology and information systems. Primarily, we pull in other groups, but I'm kind of spearheading that effort to really lead the opportunity we're all facing in the workplace that this disruption really offers. Having seen them mold enough to have seen multiple waves of disruption, including I started my career before the internet, really. So this is big. People haven't kind of clued in to the fact that this is really going to change the nature of what we do in the workplace. It definitely will.
Yeah. What one of the things I was excited when you shared that is that you've really stepped up to for HR to take the lead
Yeah.
on this and not be a passenger or another order taker.
Yeah.
Sort of going backwards. Why is that? Why was that so important to you?
Well, I think the first thing is, again, the pace is just so fast. But as I came into the end of last year, in the beginning of this year, I really felt the urgency of like, because we were like I said, we just launched a product last week that was kind of a 12-month effort. So we were trying to just block out all the distractions and focus the entire company on getting this new release out the door. But I remember a conversation we had with the leadership team is like, yeah, I know we agreed we can't kind of think about anything else, but we can't wait 6 months to get started on this. Like I'm really feeling companies starting to separate on kind of changing the entire direction of how work gets done or kind of not really dealing with it. And the more I see the people and I know and companies I know not dealing with it, the more scared I am about ending up in that group. Right. And so we really focused at the beginning of this year on just igniting the energy just around like experimenting and trying this. And as anyone who leads organizations knows, communication is about repetition and focus. And people really try to they kind of want to sense, are you going to still be talking about this a month from now, or is this actually a real thing or not? So we really had to bang the drum to get that energy and experimentation up. So we did a couple things. One was about really trying to unleash experimentation. We quickly got a policy up that we've now iterated 3 times. So it's like an organic policy, which is very unlike most policies.
Yeah, it needs to be. That's moving so fast. AI, you
It's
can't
moving
really
so
have. Yeah,
fast. That's right. And we fast tracked tools assessment and financial approval. So people are starting to get these signals that like, okay, this is actually like a different lane of things that we're dealing with at work. Our CEO, he tasked every executive with coming up with their own functional goal, the first 6 months of the year. And a lot of this is like, hey, the bar for what you do in the early going is kind of low, but what you can't do is nothing. It's like just show me you're doing something, and then we'll make it really great, right? But
yeah.
just get
It started.
going, And so we've like many companies, we've kind of iterated on how we recruit, to make sure we're not just skipping past this. We're kind of coming up on a performance feedback cycle, so we're figuring out how to really internalize that. So we're really trying to work at like the systemic level to build it in, but also the nature of how you use it at work is just changing so fast. Stuff that didn't do much 3 months ago is now really powerful
Yeah.
today. And so, yeah, it's been an exciting project to work on.
I know you're still on the journey, but based on what you've seen so far for other companies that maybe want to consider building their own neighbor program, who are the essential stakeholders that need to be involved to make this successful?
If I had to pick three, it would be the CEO, because without the CEO kind of talking about this, they're talking about something else. So you have to signal from the very top of the organization that this is essential. And then I believe the chief people officer, really dictates who gets hired, helps decide what is good work, what to recognize. And then the leader of the I information systems in particular, because while changing a tool's infrastructure is on a longer timeline, like these are usually multi-year contracts, you can't just rip them up and start over. You have to really start to work on that as quickly as possible, given the rate of change on this.
Yeah. One of the things that we spoke about on our last call, which stuck with me, was around leading with a founder's mentality amid
Yeah,
transformation. And when you talk about the neighbor program, that's what comes to mind. You're
yeah.
not thinking from the role of HR. You're thinking from the
Mm-mm.
role of a
No,
entrepreneur.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so this is kind of a different angle. It end up in the same place. When Nirav came back, in between his times as CEO at Nextdoor was about 5 years, and he had been largely an investor. So just imagine kind of not being an operator during the early 2020s when COVID happened, right? The way you worked in 2019 versus 2024 is like just so dramatically different. And so he's really had to learn a lot at kind of coming back to a full-time CEO role. But one of the things he did early on was he asked himself, listen, someone must have looked at founders coming back to their company, famously in Tech Steve Jobs came back to Apple.
Sure.
That's kind of like the iconic thing, but like it's not unusual. It's actually really kind of made into this symbolic hero thing among venture capitalists. And this is actually a few months before founder mode kind of detonated on Twitter in tech, right? And so he reached out to this author. His name's James Allen, who wrote a book with Chris Zook. They're consultants at Bain, decades of experience. They wrote a book called The Founder's Mentality. And he was like, "Hey, Richard Buck is pretty cool." And he just literally cold called him on LinkedIn, right? Which, I mean, does that work a lot? I didn't think it worked that
It
much, but
does more than you think.
it does come through more than you think is what I took away from this. And they have made this relationship now. And so we've used this book, which is excellent, as a framework to really reinstill the founder's mentality. And it's got three core principles, which include really having a bold and insurgent mission. So something that gives people urgency and energy around the collective work they're doing. Having an owner's mindset, which in tech is not that uncommon. Like almost every startup has act like an owner as a company value, including Nextdoor. We have that as well. And the third, which I think was probably the most transformative for us, was called the frontline obsession, which just means you have to be obsessed with the people who are on the front line. And what I mean by that are the people who are hands on keyboard talking to or working with or figuring out your customers, your users. Because as you get bigger, the gravity moves away from them and moves up the chain to the senior people. And so, in many ways, that frontline obsession has driven our thinking around Project NAI-BOR, which is not AI in like what senior executives are talking about, but in the people who are kind of trying to get stuff done day to day. Where is that disruption happen? Because I think what you're seeing today in a lot of the media about AI is this frustration between CEOs who are boldly proclaiming, "Oh, we're just going to cut half the company and use AI to do it." And then people on the front line are like, "It doesn't do it yet." Like it's helping and it's doing things, but it's a big leap to just say, yeah,
Yeah.
just sack everybody and put AI in it because
It doesn't have
it's not there.
context. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's creating, I think, in many parts of the world, fear
Yeah.
in the people doing the work that they're supposed to figure out how to eliminate themselves. And I just see it as a totally different opportunity to just create much more satisfying types of work for people at all levels of the organization, and really being able to transform the way things get done.
How have you taken those principles and brought them to life through the different programs and work that you do with your team? Because that's
Yeah, so
the challenge.
one thing we thought was important was to help train people. And again, it's not like you can go hire someone with 10 years of practical AI in the workplace experience. I mean, you could probably find someone who's been researching it for 10 years, but ChatGPT is only like 2+ years old, So there's not a lot of people who can kind of give you best practices. And so we, a coworker of mine and I, we're just like, hey, we've actually probably been experimenting and using this stuff for a few more months than everybody else. Let's just kind of start talking about what we've learned and make a training around it. And we used, ChatGPT to help us make the training. And I think I can't say it's like pretty or will meet all the best practices with the way an L&D practitioner would put a training together, but it's really helped people make a few steps going from, hey, I'm actually never really been able to ask anybody about how to use AI to being able to ship their own agents by the end of the training. We thought that was like a good beginning and end point that would grab attention. And I think just publicly saying, hey, we're going to try to help everybody learn together
Yeah.
moved us to having people who are on the front line working through kind of their day-to-day problems in a learning group where they can kind of learn what other people are doing and share ideas was a better way to think about how to change what we're doing than trying to do it from, the C-suite, so to speak, and just us trying to all sort through the workflows at the highest level.
Yeah. Now, I feel like you're doing the right thing because you can overthink it, but you just got to get started, right?
That's right.
And create a safe sandbox for people to play in.
Yeah,
I think the next step of that is then just trying to link that sandbox back to some of the key strategic business priorities,
definitely.
and then
100%.
and then make that tie that together basically. Because
That's
then
right.
people can really understand. Okay, this is the why behind this, and this is what this means for me, and this is what it means for the organization. And if you can bring that together, and like we said earlier, the tools are gonna change so quick that it's too early to make any real bets.
That's right.
So it's really around experimentation right now and pilots, right? and
That's right.
creating that culture of curiosity.
It is
Um,
true. And you know, one thing, this time you had a guest on the podcast who's a friend of mine, Amy Reicheneider from Databricks, and one of the things she said was the way employees kind of expect companies to care
yes.
about them. And this is some I agree with her fully, and this is something that really stepped up during COVID when employers really needed to kind of support people who are going through this pandemic crisis. I see a kind of a related theme with AI is like you have to kind of help people who feel threatened by AI or don't know how to do it. You have to really put more time and energy into helping them along this continuum than just saying, hey, kind of up to you. You should be figuring this out nights and weekends, you're on your own. And at the same time saying your job's at risk. I just don't agree with that approach. And so we've benefited from really pulling people together and say, hey, no one really knows this stuff. But things are happening very fast and people are learning very fast. So this is not something we can just come back to at the end of next year and pick it up then. And
Yeah.
so we're really trying to balance the urgency of we need to be moving on this with doing it together and saying, hey, at all levels, we've got to find wins.
I completely agree. And I think also on the flip side, I think some companies are still naive to the fact that your employees are using these tools anyway.
100%.
If you think they're not using these tools,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, probably with your data and probably not in a secure way.
It's always been like that.
Yeah, same with the internet, right? Like
It's the same with the internet. It's also the same with mobile. Like I remember many IT leaders were adamant that people could not use their own phones to do work.
Yes.
And it's like as soon as they had an iPhone, they're like, why can't I just put my email on my phone? Like I don't want to carry my laptop around to respond to email all the time. It was a hard line. You cannot use your personal phone for work. Like today, that just sounds ridiculous.
Well, that's why when BlackBerry went out of business, right? Like the moment that Apple had the security for the corporate,
it was over.
Is over that day. It's like BlackBerry CEO were like, nah, it's fine. We're never gonna.
That's a wrap.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do still miss the scroll wheel though. The wheel on the side of the BlackBerry to do email was unbelievable.
Yeah.
That was really good.
There's something about the tactileness of it that, like, the new generations would never understand.
Yeah.
My daughter actually came in the room the other day, which you'll find funny. She's 7, with a CD that fell out of a book, and she was like, "Daddy, what's this?"
It's funny. It's a coaster.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what does this do? And I was like, oh my God, my 7-year-old has no idea what a CD does. Because she's like, what? So there's like music on this? How? And she's asking me how. And then she was like, how does the music get on here? And I was like, oh my God, try and explain to your child how music gets onto a CD.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, as well. But so it's just her brain was blown by the idea that what's in Spotify, which is where she listens to her fun kids songs in her playlist, was on a physical.
Yeah, I do think the pace of talk to text, I think I have a 5-year-old son, and I think he's gonna wonder what we were doing with our thumbs all the time.
Yeah, Robin talks to Alexa all day. Yeah, she
all day,
talks,
and so I would like to not use my thumbs like this with my iPhone all day, but I do think that's going to be looked at the same way your daughter was asking about the CD.
I completely agree. I made that bet about 5 years ago when we launched this podcast on Alexa. So the team thought I was insane. They're like, why would people want to listen to the podcast? And I was like, well, because they have in the future, people will have these devices around their house, and they'll probably just want to talk to it and then play.
That's right.
The podcast,
I agree,
right?
fully.
But this is like 5 years ago. My team was like, no one's going to do that, and now pretty much every single person I know has a smart device.
Yeah, and I think they're going to get like your phone now. It's got like the laundry machine and the dishwasher notifications. Like you should just be able to talk to the dishwasher and talk to the laundry machine. I don't think that's far away.
Yeah, I'm pretty extreme with that now. Like my Alexa's even connected to my bed, where I
That's great.
Yeah, I'm like basically I can tell it to cool down the bed ahead of me going to sleep. So I go in and it's
lovely,
17 degrees, nice and cool. As well, I think my whole house is automated, but I feel like that Robin's grown up in that environment, so she doesn't know any different. She expects to walk in the room and turn on the light with her voice and say, Alexa, turn my bedroom red. She expects that.
It's interesting. I wonder if they're going to want the opposite. They're going to want all analog.
Oh, they're going to go like, well, that's kind of the it's in fashion right now. It's in fashion.
one thing that's always in fashion is young people don't want what the older people want, no matter what it is. Just as a rule, they want the opposite.
Isn't it crazy to think that what we're talking about right now is going to be seen by them as old fashioned? We're talking about the future right now, the most advanced, state that we've seen technology with the state of AI. But by the time the kids are older, they're going to be like, "Oh my god!" Like you used to have to actually type words in the LLM. You couldn't just talk out loud, and every wearable that you're wearing automatically can detect that and give you what you need. It's going to be crazy.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
How do you think that AI is going to shape employee experience? Because we're already seeing significant leaps that we've worked for many years with our customers, right? Creating that hyper personalized customer experience. And I think AI is now going to allow us to really start to do this in a way more meaningful way with our employees.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing I've been thinking about it is not kind of here yet, but is on the horizon is when it relates to the employee experience. Any chief people officer knows as you scale, you have to kind of standardize a lot of what you're doing. So for example, when you build an onboarding program, the really good onboarding programs have elements of this shared experience, regardless of what level or job the person's doing, that tries to make the first week or the first month both confirm that they're excited about their new job, but also get them up to speed at work as quickly as possible. But you've kind of got to do the same program, right? And so, because what you can't do is have a different person on the people team customize the delivery of the onboarding to every single person who's starting. And think about bigger companies of 100 people starting a week or 500 people starting a month. Like the idea you could just customize 500 versions of your onboarding is not really something you contemplate. But with more and more sophisticated agents, you can. And so what you can really start to do is tailor the kind of shared experience you want all employees to have with the unique kind of characteristics of each employee and what they might want. That's kind of just not something you could think about before. You do that for everything. You could do that for recruiting. You could do that for benefits offerings. You could do that for internal communications. And so I think being able to really create this bespoke employee experience at a really big scale is an opportunity that AI really gives you. And then I think when you join, today you get set up, open up your Slack account, open up your email account, open up your payroll account. You have to do all this stuff. You're going to open up your kind of AI copilot, whatever that is, on day one. And it's going to know all this stuff you don't know, which is part of being a new hire. Like, oh, I wish someone told me that a month ago. That's like the experience of everyone who ever starts a new job, right? This copilot's going to be able to kind of prevent those things from happening. And also you can start to educate it on what you know. And I just think very quickly, your version of your Chat GPT, custom GPT, or your Gemini that's tied to your sort of Google Docs, whatever it might be, is going to be the standard thing you start your new job with.
It's so interesting you say that because at the end of this month, that's exactly what we're launching with Atlas Copilot.
I think it's, and so I could really see like the coordinators on the people team who today are sending out emails to new hires are actually programming a custom GPT based, or really an AI will code the GPT, but today the short term someone's got to like set it up. Then they'll be managing the agents, right? So we'll be able to really automate like how do you set up the right agent for the right employee. And I just think that's going to really transform, because right now people have to ask the people team, they have to ask their business partner, they ask their recruiter, basic stuff, but also kind of important cultural stuff like, hey, people are kind of operating a little differently here. Can you kind of give me some advice? And that you got to have people who are here answering that. So it's really exciting to see the opportunities that are brand new.
I'm glad you're saying that, because that was kind of a big request for us when we launched Atlas, is from our partners saying, hey, can you build us onboarding agents? And then training it yes, of course, on our content, our policies and our materials, but also our culture and our values and understanding that. So when they're onboarding, sometimes you don't want to ask those questions to your manager, right? You want to be able to ask that, and even pre-boarding, right? But before you even get there, and we're already seeing, we've rolled this out already. The next iteration's way more powerful because it allows us to now integrate that into Slack and Teams and in the flow of work and generate learning pathways based on the questions. But that in itself has been a game changer.
It's just beginning.
It's just beginning.
It's just the entry point on changing pretty dramatically how work gets done there.
One of the things I was thinking about with this as well, as hard skills become more accessible through AI, and we're already seeing now that you can code and build apps, etc. Soft skills I don't like to say soft skills, but let's say power skills, human skills, have become more and more important. And I'm wondering what that means for the CV, because a lot of the CVs in the past are very focused on hard skills. And not
Yeah.
all, but there's quite a big weight on that. And I'm wondering if degrees and CVs disappear, would your hiring process still survive or
I mean, it's
collapse?
yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the harder part of that question is like, well, what do you need if the need for the hard skills changes? Makes hiring different. But I think if you look at, particularly for me, watching kind of this younger generation coming up, there's just so much more available that they've created than their CV. Like when I would be interviewing for a job 20 years ago, the resume is like the whole thing.
Yeah, everything.
Me,
Yeah.
if I don't know anybody, that's like the whole conversation. And you can't even really research me when I'm a 25-year-old and come up with anything, you know? Now, like a lot of people have audiences that they've cultivated. Even if you just have 500 connections on LinkedIn, you have people connected to you. You can kind of, and I think this younger group is better at curating their online identity than people who have navigated like kind of really growing up with it, for someone like me, multiple decades. And so it's almost like a resume doesn't give me much of the picture if I can really look at their Instagram or
The
their
personal
TikTok
brand,
or their
basically.
posting. Like I get
Mm.
a much better feel for what they've provided, the world than just this kind of quick summary. And because so much of my time will be freed up by I can spend more than 5 minutes trying to make sense of a resume. And I can have AI surface a lot of this for me and synthesize a lot of this for me. So I do think the nature of what a candidate profile is going to open up dramatically because AI will allow you to synthesize more and people are creating more. But I think the challenge you're actually getting at is like, what are the skills you're going to need if the skills in the workplace really change? And that I don't think that's a new problem. That's just the latest disruption. That's always been the case, and I think people will. So I think people are so interested in learning AI is they kind of are knowing I've got to know what I'm talking about here
Yeah.
for the future, and I think that that's really true. It is. I do agree with this. Like someone 5 years from now who's just I just don't know AI, I don't know how to use it. I saw people with that attitude related to the internet in the late '90s, early 2000s, and it really hurts you, a few years in when it really becomes adopted.
Sorry,
It's
too
you have
late.
to really try to catch up. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point earlier, though, we do have to understand that not everyone's going to be like me and you, and very excited and jumping straight on it, and we have to help people along the way,
Yeah.
and help them like we did with the internet. and
And the same thing, it's so funny to talk about the internet it really has a lot of similarities. I definitely see a lot of this counter trend right now that AI is not what it's hyped up to be. It's not going to be as fast as you thought. You're almost getting this counter wave of, hey, it's not as big
Yes.
of a deal. And some of that is in the resistance of job loss. People are kind of actually going to not want to help it get on board because they're afraid their jobs are at risk. But it was a very similar thing in the 2000s. You can find the famous quotes of people in the crash of the dot-com era saying, "Hey, look, internet's probably just best case scenario is like a marketing tool for marketers." I mean, think about calling the internet that today, right?
Everyone
But
did.
I'm seeing that. I'm saying like anything. I'm seeing the counter trend start to emerge in the popular opinion,
Yeah.
and I, I don't know. I believe
When you're chatting to your network right now, what's the top top three
this is a. I
things that keep
mean,
coming? Of course, AI. Let's put AI to one
AI is a
side.
big one.
Yeah, of
AI
course.
is a big
But
one
outside of
for
AI,
sure.
what are the top areas that are
I
coming up
think
in
people,
conversation?
the world feels unsettled, more so than usual. Just the global geopolitical environment feels, I guess there's always conflict, but it just feels less stable. And so I think what that translates to work is people turn to work as something that's closer to home, and they put a lot of their energy into their employee experience as a way to channel their frustration with the bigger world. I definitely feel that quite a bit. Mental health is a really big topic, something I've cared about a lot. I think we all uh, kind of take that on in different ways. But I think that that's really become a very common topic at work relative to 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, like I think I said last time we spoke, we introduced our well-being summit 3 years ago, thinking, meh, maybe it would be something interesting for our HR community, and we had 3,000 attendees for the
That's
first
wild.
first event, and it was incredible. And I personally, hid my anxiety and panic attacks for nearly 20 years from my friends and family, and was so
Yeah,
scared to talk about it. And obviously realized that my closest friends and family and colleagues were all suffering in silence too,
that's right.
as well. So that's been a game changer and something that we're really passionate about
Yeah, I
to
mean,
continue.
for me, particularly COVID, I think normalized this topic for everybody because it was a global
Yeah.
mental health crisis,
Hmm.
and I've also really suffered with anxiety and depression in the past. And, not being able to talk about it, especially when it becomes an obstacle at work, can really be a challenge. And particularly because employees are often responsible for a lot of it. And so I really think companies have started to embrace like, hey, this is going to be better if we can push people to do their best work without it creating negative consequences. And I think as I've talked about the topic for a long time, I see an expanding of the conversation. So it's not just only about the kind of traumatic aspects of mental health or mental illness, but also kind of saying, hey, there's practices here that can help you get ready to do your best work. And if you're, I want people to want to do their best work. I want people to do hard things and trying to do hard things because when you do really hard things you didn't think you could do, you make these big career leaps. You find success you didn't think you had in you. But that adversity creates stress, and stress can create anxiety and depression can lead to sudden. There's all these risks, right? But I don't believe the answer is to try to minimize adversity as much as possible because
Yeah.
that just means you stop pushing to do things, right? And so I think the mental health conversation is broadening to like if you think about professional athletes, right? Like they prime their mental health to be Olympic champions. It's not only about kind of the suffering, which is very true. Many people are suffering inside. That's kind of not my point here. But you can include everybody in this topic if you broaden it to also put to the positive end of the spectrum. It will really elevate your output personally and professionally if you pay attention to priming your mental health as much as preventing things from happening to your mental health.
Yeah. I love that concept. I think where I've got in trouble in the past is I don't know my limit.
Yeah,
So I grew up playing hockey at a high level and many other ice hockey and many other sports, and we push ourselves to our limits physically, mentally. We'll win some games, lose some games, um, and it's similar in business. But for some, I think one of the things I've realized is like as long as I know that I'm in a sprint and I'm
yeah,
conscious of that, that I understand that okay, I'm in a sprint right now. I need to dial in my sleep,
yeah,
dial in my exercise, etc. Because I know that if I don't do that, I'm probably going to break at some point. And in the past, I haven't recognized the signs of that, and I didn't even know I was in a sprint, and it's kind of ended in disaster through a panic attack or anxiety or just exhaustion
yeah.
along the way.
Those are like the injuries of mental health that happen, right? The same way you might tear a knee
Yeah,
in a physical sport. Like if you go too hard mentally, you end up anxious or depressed or lack of sleep,
yeah,
whatever it might be. The workplace injury of the modern workplace is not physical. A lot of the healthcare infrastructure is around physical injuries, getting sick, fall off a ladder and break your leg. Like that's what the employer is supposed to cover, but that's not the adversity we experience when the workplace becomes challenging today.
it's interesting because tomorrow I'm actually interviewing the chief HR officer of Headspace. Right,
Yeah,
the idea of an application like Headspace, 10, 15 years ago would have been so foreign to
I
people.
totally agree.
What do you
Especially as a
mean?
corporate benefit, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. Right, you'd be like, "That's nothing to
Yeah,
do with us. We're a business." But
yeah,
the fact that Headspace and their corporate offering of Headspace is kind of thriving, and I used it before it was even they even had a
hmm
solution for the enterprise as well. The contrast between that and maybe around that time, I remember going to my director at the time saying I needed some time off because my mental health. I was told to man up and go get back on the
yeah.
phone. That was
Nuts.
that was the response. And I never spoke to anyone ever again since. I mean, obviously now I have, but I mean, for years after that, I never I know that was
Yeah.
my like, what are you talking about? Like, unless you were
Yeah.
physically ill, it didn't count. You know.
I
Uh,
agree. I think, yeah, I just see this tension even today. I do think the generation entering the workforce is much more fluent in mental health
a
topics. You
hundred
know, they
percent.
embrace therapy, really have better. I think one of their kind of the obvious uh, developments on setting personal boundaries. Some people get really frustrated that younger people are setting boundaries during the day or night, but we used to have my parents had a natural boundary where work stopped at 6 o'clock. You couldn't get emails all night. You couldn't get Slacks all night. And so you enter the workforce today, this stuff kind of no matter what, if your work is
It's
online, like this
true.
stuff's relentless. There's no break. You have to create the break. And just saying work all the time relentlessly in today's world is very different from before where you kind of go home, sit down, have dinner, turn on the television and watch the news at 6:30. Like that boundary was built in. And so I do think the evolution is people are kind of taking a better handle on how to maintain themselves. Again, my current thing is like I don't think just reducing ambition is the
I
answer.
agree.
It's really about how do you level up successfully. That's not just power through it. It is kind of focus on the things you're going to need to navigate a more challenging period.
Yeah.
Is
I
what
feel like
more
the
is what they're
athlete
looking for.
analogy is probably the best one, like you said. Right. You see the people at the top of their game, right?
Yeah,
And the best at what they do, they're still going to get a coach, like for their mental health, right? Uh,
100%.
and it's like, well, wait a minute. They're already at the peak of what they're doing, and they're still looking for that because they know in order to sustain that, they need to ensure that they're taking care of it.
And to it's the same extension of your personal example is like athletes from 30 years ago would like finish the game, light up a cigarette, go to the bar,
That's
like
true.
stay out all night. Like they're not kind of behave. They were like, if I did all this stuff, lift weights, like train, I would have played for 25 years. They all played for 10 years. It's exceptionally rare to go longer than that because of these things. So I think that once you know that, your choice on how you're spending your kind of time and energy,
Yeah.
you wise up to it.
Um, you currently work hybrid, right?
Yes.
A hybrid work. I was to ask your thoughts. You know, a lot of people are kind of afraid to talk about this topic. To get in
Topic of our time.
topic of our
Yeah.
time, right? Like, my most viral post last year was on this topic. It had 130 million views on LinkedIn. And I was just wondering, like, what's the sort of one uncomfortable truth about hybrid work that you think we're not talking about enough that we really should be?
Well, I think it shouldn't be such a polarized debate. Like one way is right and one way is wrong. And I've continued to see that pattern where certain typically older execs are like, no one's doing any work. We've just got to get people back to the office is one side. And the other side is like, I don't know why you care about where I am as long as I get my stuff done. Like that. Those are kind of like I see the two ends of the spectrum on this debate. And I think and we've done everything. We've kind of gone fully remote. We kind of force people back to the office. I'd say we're right now we have a much more flexible kind of functional approach to people want to go in, they can go in. And we try to be intentional about personal gatherings. So I think that on the first side, for the people who say without everyone in the office, you can't do anything, I think that is there are benefits when you are very small and you can all get into one room together all day that do not translate to work from home. However, you lose the personal flexibility of working from home that is desirable. But the truth is, if you're all in a room, you can just go faster. Now, it's not a lot of companies are that small. So as you get bigger, once people are in multiple rooms, multiple floors, or then multiple buildings or multiple locations, you have to figure out how to work virtually no matter what. And so the truth of like, I don't know why I got to come to the office just to get on video all day is also a very valid criticism. There's this kind of, it's just going to happen serendipitously. It was true a long time ago, but also because people weren't on their phones all the time when they were together. So you see people in the office that don't know each other. They don't just start small
They're
talk
not
all the
even
time. They're
looking.
they're checking. They're not
Yeah.
even making eye contact.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what that means is and this is a common truth right now, is the intentionality of getting together in person is really important. You have to kind of say, why are we getting together in person, and what are we going to do together in person that really benefits everybody. And I find some people are skeptical of the value of that. I don't think that's true. It's not true that everything is better virtually or from home.
Yeah.
And so you have to start to be really consistent on what on the in-person front. I think people get like you've got to be intentional about why you're doing it, and there's real benefits. And I think most people generally agree with that. On the work from home thing, I think that the challenge for many organizations is it's harder to maintain the same urgency intensity when someone's sitting in their house versus sitting in an office with other people. And so people really enjoy the flexibility of blending their work and life at home. The challenge for managers and for leaders is how do we make sure that the stuff we need to get done is at the right pace, versus you've trying to just loosen the reins, so to speak, maybe a bad metaphor, but how do you drive that intensity virtually is harder to do. And that's why I think a lot of leaders and managers want people to be face to face so they can kind of drive
Yeah.
intensity in a different way. And that I still think, people are sorting out what that means. I personally think the benefit to employees to work from home, a real amount of time, carries such benefits to work-life balance, to making their life easier so they can do a better job. It's so real. It's hard for many jobs. It's hard to justify that you just shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
That mean of control, I think, is really been disrupted permanently by the experience.
I love everything you just shared, but specifically the pace and the intensity piece, because a lot of times it's not that the work's not getting done, is it
Yeah,
getting done at the pace and the
that's right.
intensity to deliver results faster, remain competitive, really move the
Yeah.
needle, right? And it's hard to create that urgency when someone's sitting at home in the kitchen.
That and also
I'm not
work
saying that's
and
for
also
everyone, but I can see, and even me, by the way, one of the reasons that I come into our office every day is that when I'm at home, I don't have the same intensity and pace because
that's
I
right.
kind of just naturally, I'm at home. It's where I relax typically and where I
Which is
decompress
good.
and deconnect, right? Whereas when I come into the studio, I kind of step into another gear, and I don't even consciously do that. I mean, so I subconsciously do that. I walk through the door and I just click into another
Yeah.
gear, and I'm moving. And that's not for everyone. But for me, I actually enjoy coming in to step into that new gear and that new pace.
It's interesting because I think that I keep referring to the younger generation, but I learned so much from people entering the workforce. The first thing is, if you're 27, 28 years old, you don't know what return to the office is. Like you weren't in the
That's
office in
true. Yeah,
2019
I
or
have no idea what
2018.
we're
So
talking about.
so when you're like come back to what? I was in college or I was 19. So someone who's 27, 20 years old, you're talking like 5, 6 years of experience now. They don't have that frame of reference. And so I think that's really significant. It's like I know what it was like, and so that's a learned behavior for me. But increasingly, the workforce of the future doesn't have that reference,
Yeah,
right? And so you have to kind of. I just think that's why it will be very hard to uh, go back. It's gotta take the best elements of the past and merge them with the opportunities of the future. I do think there's something about pace and expectations. Like working asynchronously at the same pace is really hard because people are kind of like, I'm going to do it when I'm going to turn back on and get with it. And so that can space
it's
out
so
if you're
hard.
not being intentional about the speed with which something needs to get done. It will just drag because people are dropping in and out of when work is good for
It
them.
makes things
And I
take 10 times longer. Like I had a
yeah,
call recently where we're setting up a new marketing system and platform for the launch of a couple of new products, and everyone was working remotely in different time zones, and it was just like, okay, you go away and do X, Y, and Z, and it just became a nightmare. And I just said, actually, you know what? We're going to schedule a time, and we're all going to sit on a
yeah,
call, and we're going to stay on this call until all the work gets done. What was supposed to be a month's worth of work, we did in like 2 days because we
that's
came
right.
on the call at the same time. I was about to swear, but we made X happen, and we just moved quickly. Right? If there's any bottlenecks, we remove them immediately. If there's any approvals needed, we approved them immediately. If anyone needed any
Yeah.
feedback or any help, we removed it immediately, and stuff just happened. Right?
Yeah, so
And
that's what I
yeah,
mean. You have to manage it. It doesn't just happen,
hmm,
and I think that's harder for people when it's distributed, when it's asynchronous, than if you're all just sitting around on the same floor in an office where the manager can just kind of see what's getting done and people just ask quickly.
yeah,
So that's the challenge that I think is being sorted through.
yeah. Well, listen, man, I could talk to you forever, but before I let you go, what would be your kind of parting advice for those HR leaders of tomorrow who are going to be facing maybe a very different world that we're in right now.
Yeah,
What?
I think it's we're in a period where you have to just be uncomfortable with things not being figured out. But I've been very impressed with the HR community really since COVID has become much more open and learning, like sharing, learning, and helping each other. It's very different from my experience before the 2020s. Not that it wasn't like people weren't sharing, but there's a bias to share right now. And I think it started because no one knew what to do with the work from home kind of disruption. And so this AI disruption is just a new disruption. And so I would just say, like, be uncomfortable with that it's not figured out and lean into the community to try to both help and learn and share what's going on. Because for all people leaders, the way we do it, we're going to figure it out in the next few years. And this is both hybrid work and AI. And so we'll all get there faster if we've got a community mindset.
Amazing. And Bryan, where's best place for people to connect with you? LinkedIn?
The easiest thing's LinkedIn. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time to come on the show. For everyone listening, the links will be below to connect with Bryan on LinkedIn. And if you want to check out Nextdoor, there'll also be a link below as well. Check out your local area, your local neighborhood as well. We literally had, I mentioned to Bryan today, one of my employees was like, hey, I use that. I just moved houses and I use Nextdoor. And I was like, we didn't even make that up. It wasn't even a sponsored plug. It worked out really well. But I appreciate you and thanks for sharing your journey and looking forward to doing it again soon in the future.
Thanks for having me, Chris.